What is restorative justice?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
It's a term that's been thrown around a lot lately in the news after the Kickamuit Middle School situation where 2 Fridays ago the teachers walked out because of their mental health needs because the kids were out of control. And since then we've heard some things about it, but we really don't know exactly what it is. My guest tonight is expert in it, and she will talk to us about it, and maybe we'll come away with a little bit of a better understanding as to what the goals are. Great to have you in on this Thursday. Let's get right to it because there's a lot going on. In Washington, it's just crazy. I said last night that the deadline was today. I was kind of being figurative. I figured like a day in advance of the shutdown, you probably want to process the signature from what the congressional leadership is doing. But as we speak here early afternoon, the president had not yet made a move, with the deadline being tonight, right? So as you're watching the show either at 7:30 or midnight, hopefully something has been done to avert the shutdown. But it is pretty guaranteed that the president's going to follow this up with some kind of effort to rake some more money somewhere, which will start another constitutional crisis. Because I think on both sides of the aisle, they're not going to accept that. We'll see. In the meantime, underneath all of this, Paul Manafort lies to the prosecutors. The judge says so, and now his deal is off. And if we didn't have shutdown wall controversy camouflaging this part of the Mueller investigation, it would be dominating the news cycle, no doubt about it. I don't know if this ends up being the smoking gun, lying about this meeting with this Russian emissary to an oligarch on a smoke-filled night in a cigar bar on the top of 666 Fifth Avenue or whatever. But the drama still plays on, and the calls for Mueller to wrap this thing up are the calls. Mueller's still working on his own timetable, know that. In the meantime, regarding obstruction of justice and all of that kind of a thing, look at this headline. CBS has a 60 Minutes episode coming up this weekend where Andrew McCabe, the fired FBI director, says that there was a time right there after the FBI director prior to him was fired that they all looked at each other and said, we got a real problem. Scott Pelley's reporting on this.
Most illuminating and surprising thing in the interview to me were these 8 days in May when all of these things were happening behind the scenes that the American people really didn't know about. There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the president of the United States under the 25th Amendment. These were the 8 days from Comey's firing to the point that Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel, and the highest levels of American law enforcement were trying to figure out what to do with the president.
I don't know if you're surprised or shocked by that, but I'm semi-comforted by it. Not in the sense that I want to see Trump yanked out of office, but that they actually felt it was compelling enough for the president to fire James Comey that they had to think about whether or not he had his marbles together or whether he was working as an agent for another country. That they thought about it is provocative enough. We'll find out what was at least alleged by Mr. McCabe in that interview on Sunday, talk about it Monday. He's the only source for the story, by the way, and so others suggest that he may not have it exactly right. We'll see. It's high drama around President Trump all the time, right? Let me just clarify something I said yesterday about this abortion poll that was sanctioned and sponsored and put in the field by some pro-life groups here in town. This 74% of Rhode Islanders believe that you shouldn't have late-term abortion. And I said, well, that's understandable. One thing I failed to mention yesterday, knew it, but failed to mention, and I just want to clarify. The percentage of late-term abortions, say after 21 weeks, drops precipitously to under 1%. And most of those abortions occur because of concerns either about the health of the mother or what a mother and doctor are projecting might be the quality of life for the baby or the fetus. You can argue that if you like to. I just wanted to put that data in there because I think we don't want to add to some unnecessarily compelling, dramatic debate about late-term abortions and a visual that I think a lot of you have that lead toward that response. I'm not advocating for late-term abortion. I'm not doing that at all, but I just wanted to clarify that we need to be somewhat tempered in our debate and discussion about this. And what's interesting is that I'm having a hard time, both on the radio and on the television, getting reasonable people who feel strongly about this and who are advocating for laws and or fighting laws to speak publicly about it. Because you know why? The nuances of this conversation are difficult for people. Shouting and sending press releases and offering testimony is kind of safe zone. We're doing our best to try to get you more informed on that one. In the meantime, it is Parkland's anniversary, and it's nothing to celebrate. Can you imagine a year has gone by? The kids, the parents, the teachers are struggling today.
It's just very uncomfortable being at that particular school, knowing that that's where I nearly lost my life.
It's been kind of a hard year of firsts, so you're going through the first birthday, you're going through the first family getaway, first Christmas, and having that kind of hole everywhere you go. Yeah, it's been pretty hard.
Thank God we haven't had one of those, and I hope the anniversary doesn't spark some wacky event. We have all sorts of conversations right now about gun control. The governor is stepping things up on school grounds, some of which I think is gratuitous and unnecessary, but because we're cultured to celebrate anniversaries, the first thing we got to do is pray for those people, because a year gone by is hardly healing. They got a lot of guts to keep moving along. In the meantime, moving along at Kickamuit Middle School, they're back in school and were right after this Friday, 2 Fridays ago, when the teacher said we just need a break because the kids are nuts and we just can't deal with it. A lot of tumult ensued, and the school committee decided to put a cop in, which I thought was kind of round peg, square hole, even though I believe resource officers are a great asset. Julia Steiny has been working on this thing called restoration, and welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
The term is, I think, self-explanatory, but the program is completely lost on everybody, it seems to me.
It's complicated, as you said earlier. Things are nuanced. It's not a program, it's really a mindset. And the mindset is that punishment doesn't work. If you get into all of the data, so people say, where's the data on restoration? And the field out there is saying, where's the data on punishment? And what you can get from punishment is compliance at best, or resentment, anger, pushback. There's not much there that helps. For example, the United States is 5% of the population and 25% of the prisoners in the world. If that were making us safe, we would be the safest nation in the world. But it's not. Punishment by prison isn't making us safe. So, most of the restoration initiatives started in the justice system in the developed country in various places. The origin story that I use is in New Zealand. The origin story is as follows. In 1974, New Zealand passed a law saying if the kids did the naughty, they got taken away and put into the justice system, but removed from the parents. If the parents did the naughty, kids got taken away and removed from the parents. It was not just New Zealand, it was us, it was everybody was saving the kids by removing them from their naughty parents. 30% of that population is the Maori tribe, which is an indigenous group. And they went back and back and back and back to the government saying, ain't working for us, for two big reasons. One is you are remanding our kids into your welfare and justice system at extraordinary rates, kind of like we do here with men of color, young men of color. But the worst thing is, when they come back, we can't reintegrate them. They've been out there learning not very nice survival skills, either in a juvenile detention facility or in foster care, residential, or wherever they are. And they have no relationship with grandma. They don't care what mom says. They aren't going to be part of the culture. They're not going to learn the traditions. And they gather together in what we would call gangs. and they're wrecking us. At some point, 1989 in specific, the government said, okay, what do you want us to do? And what the tribe said was, bring them to tribal circle. Our ways work better than your ways. Yours, like you see the thing and you do some action without ever finding out what went on. In tribal circle, bring your cops, bring your social workers, bring whoever it is, but bring the victims. Because the offenders need to hear what it was like to be on the other side of that behavior. Because only with that little prick of shame are you going to really change behavior.
Okay, so this foundational thinking obviously is advising some of the stuff that's going on now. When we come back, we'll explain how. Stay with us. So let me remind you about what happened a couple of weeks ago in Bristol Warren.
KKMU Middle School teachers dressed in purple, the school color, as they spoke to the Bristol Warren Regional School Committee about safety concerns at the middle school. The teachers union held a sick-out last week that forced school to close. The teachers saying there are too many fights and behavior issues among students and not enough resources to deal with them.
Our school is currently serving more as a triage than a place to grow. We need no more Band-Aids.
The measures that are being taken at KMS right now are not working. And they're not working because the behavior of the children, particularly the ones in most need, their behavior is not changing.
One teacher claims there have been 3 teachers assaulted this year, though the superintendent disputes that.
There's one teacher injury on record.
Warren police say they've been called to the school 18 times this school year, including 4 times for fighting and twice for possession of a knife. Teachers say more trained staff members could help handle the behavioral issues.
I think they're beautiful suggestions. I'm hoping that, again, we can work together and come up with the ways to implement those.
Superintendent Mario Andrade says the district is looking into implementing alternative learning plans.
But that takes a lot of time and money.
The superintendent, I don't know him, he looks to me like, he looks cornered, in some ways. And I think the district has reacted in a kind of, close it down, close ranks type of way. They snuck out a hiring of a police officer. I believe, do you think resource officers are good things in the schools?
I think statistically they tend to criminalize adolescent behavior. There's a lot of controversy about them.
Okay, so you're not bought into that. You're not going to give that to me. But in general, let's just understand the assignment of this officer is an untrained officer, and they said, down the line we might have a resource officer, which is a trained police officer for the schools, and there's still controversy about whether that works well. Those are mostly teachers that were speaking there, talking about the environment. What is your reaction to their reaction?
It is the kids are getting harder. The kids are getting harder. As there's fraying among the social fabric, the kids are definitely not coming in with a whole lot of the basic, what we call restorative skills. Being able to negotiate with you in a responsible, kind way, as opposed to screaming at you. And that's kind of the model. It's the TV model. It's the model is to be super aggressive. There's not much to stop them, but to be aggressive back to them as a way of fixing things has been shown to kind of blow up. Also, nationally, this has happened. They start down, KKMU has a few teachers who got trained in restorative. I don't know what they did after that, but that's not enough to create a cultural change. You're trying to change a whole culture.
Well, look, you go back to your parenting skills, right? And, it reminds me that anytime I lost my cool with my kid, thankfully it didn't happen a lot in my life, and she's 24 and thriving, and still every once in a while you kind of want to say something, and maybe the decibel range goes up a little bit. Generally, I would be thinking that wasn't the best way to get things done. And so asking questions, talking things out, lowering the temperature, I think as a parent, I think most of us find that that's the better way to do
when
business.
You can pull yourself together.
Correct.
And do it. Yes.
Right. So I'm hearing what you're saying in terms of this restorative thing, but when you're dealing with 25, 27 kids in a classroom, depending on what level you're teaching at, And then you multiply it by numbers of classrooms and cafeterias and hallways and gymnasiums.
To be sure.
It gets whoo-hoo-hoo.
Right.
And so what I've heard is that this requires work.
Yeah.
And resources and training and money and by the same thing, right? True?
Yes.
And how long do you think it takes to train restorative practice to a single school? Just one school. You've been doing it in Central Falls, right?
I have, and with the oldest of our initiatives, which is Calcutt Middle School, is by far, you know, I mean, they've really turned around. It was a very hot place. It's not a hot place anymore. It's got a lot of restorative practices that are, it's not perfect. And if you go to a national conference, they'll tell you that there isn't a perfect school out there. One of the problems with schools is churn. Every time you got a new principal, half of the time it was a dead lift to get it back going again. There aren't that many people who know how to do it, who know how to implement it. We haven't built enough of a culture around it that I can say, there's a perfect example.
Where does the culture have to begin?
Everybody says there has to be universal buy-in. I absolutely no longer believe that. There needs to be a coalition of the willing, and it needs to be enough of a critical mass, and I can't tell you what that is. In a 70-person adult, does it need to be 11? I don't know. I've seen people so committed that they just hang on to it and start to build it out. I've also seen you train up 11 people and it dissipates quickly because there's nothing to support it.
Does it need an emissary from the top? Does it need a czar?
If you do not have administrative buy-in, it is very difficult to keep up.
And our schools, well, when we come back, because Mary Beth Calabro, the teacher union president in Providence, mentioned this the other day here on the show. I think Julia will be interested in her thoughts. Stay with us.
I think that we need to have a whole community, district, legislator, ride conversation about what does this look like, because everybody's talking about restorative practices, but no one has supported districts, teachers, and students or families with the money and the training and the information to say, what does that look like? What does that look like in a school, and how, not one of my teachers in my building has been trained in restorative practices, but we toss the word around a lot.
And to double down on Mary Beth Calabro, the teacher union president in Providence, I got a call on the radio the other day after I think you were on with me on WPRO weekdays 3 to 6, and a Providence teacher called and said, yeah, we're doing restorative practices. I said, oh, great. What is it? She goes, oh, we call detention restorative. Mm. I said, okay, well, does it get deeper than that? No. Mm. I said, well, do you send them to the restorative room? She says, no, we still send them to the detention room. Mm-hmm. But we're supposed to write it's a restorative act. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you've been trained in that? She said, oh, no. We were told, call detention restorative. Is that the beginning of something good, or is that just a ridiculous dynamic?
It's a national dynamic. We got this thing. If we call it restorative, we're all done.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do the work. It's like saying It's like having a gym membership and not going.
Very much so.
Right.
Here's my card.
Right.
Right. See my muscles? No. Right. I agree with absolutely everything she said. And in other countries, that's where it is. It's cross-sector. So the cops are speaking the same common language as the social workers, as the teachers, and then hopefully as you bring the parents along. When we would go out and do conferencing, we have this little sheet, and we would teach the parents the basic skills and say, you can't come to the conference unless you're willing to agree to go by questions, use I statements, take your turn, and not double down on dumping on the kid or the teacher or the parent. You can't yell at each other. That's not what we're here for. We're here to find out what happened, hold accountable, make an agreement for how we're going to make things right. That's part of restorative, is how we're going to make amends.
You actually have a little graph in the restorative world that kind of shows, all right, Johnny shows up at the school.
Right.
Does Johnny see a police officer, or does Johnny see teachers, administrators welcoming him and saying good morning? Johnny's late for class. Does Johnny's teacher yell at him because he's late for class, or does Johnny's teacher pull him aside later and ask him why and what's going on at home? I mean, okay, but Johnny's teacher needs to be reminded that this is a practice, not a one good day moment, right? And that there's accountability and measurability and how teachers are performing, administrators are performing in this?
It's very hard to measure because of the cross sector. I just came off of this research
But
grant.
you think this middle school in Central Falls is doing well, so you've measured something.
The heat in the building. I mean, I've been in that building for 10 years, and it was, whoa. So
You mean tension?
just tension, yes. I mean, as a columnist, I know this is arrogant, but I used to be able to say, I can tell you about how the health of that building from the foyer. You can just feel it and hear it in some sense.
I think that's true. I think most people feel that they can get a sense of a business or a school building
From the foyer.
Yeah, well,
Right.
you're probably better than most, but
Well,
and by the way,
I've been in more than most.
we miss your columns, and at some juncture,
That's nice of you.
You may go back to that work, right? Because you were a voice of analysis and reason in the schools that I think has been missing.
Aren't you lovely?
Well, I think it has. We'll talk about it another day. All right, wrap this thing up for me, because of course, we can't accomplish much on the program other than to say this is what people ought to be thinking about. Do we need gubernatorial leadership and commissioner leadership to say we are going to implement a restorative practices mindset in Rhode Island? It's going to cost X. Every district's going to have a metric of Y, and it's going to be upward and upward in 3 or 4 years. We're going to change the culture of the schools. Is that what should be done?
That hasn't worked elsewhere because it sounds like a mandate. You have to cut suspensions. And
So you want it to be grassroots? You want it to be bottom up?
No, both. Bottom up, top down. So if I went to a conference and the mayor of Oakland stood up and said, we are going to be a restorative city. I don't even know what that means, but boy, when I'm watching the graduation rate and I'm watching the heat go down like that, I know I want to be part of that. And in that case, they've got a thing going on with juvenile justice. They were looking in there.
So
It's got to be crossed.
What's the teacher watching the show or the principal watching the show right now supposed to do tomorrow, thinking, hey, Steiny's smart, we should do this, we should start thinking this way? In 20 seconds, what should they do tomorrow?
They should advocate for some training and some help with changing the systems within. You need to change the systems that are implemented in the building. You can't just train and you can't just do the systems. You have to do the two together.
So those teachers,
and administrators have to buy in.
Right, so those teachers that were at those microphones at Kickamuet's response meeting also have to be part of the solution, as do those parents all sitting there.
They can't do it by themselves, though. I mean, they need a lot of support. You can only have a couple of questions in the middle of the Lewis and Clark expedition. You got business to attend to.
I get it. Thanks. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know. Final word and we come back. I'm kind of old school, like I'm sure many of you are. Demand discipline. Something's not working. So maybe we ought to be rethinking this whole thing. We'll talk more about this and do some more work at it on both programs. In the meantime, we're going to meet the Gatorade Runner of the Year tomorrow and his highly acclaimed coach from Hendricken High School. Something different. Good night.